is an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Cradle, Book 8, Wintersteel, Chapters 18 and 19. In these chapters, Yerin gets given a bunch of gifts, and they are really awesome. But the most awesome one of all is a gift that I think a lot of us would love to have, which is an extra month packed into a single day. What I wouldn't give. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Andy for commissioning this episode. Hi, Andy, if you're out there. We have a bunch of people in the chat. Hello, everybody. Forgive me, guys, if my energy is low. I got COVID, as it turns out, but I'm still very excited to talk about this, and my low energy levels are by no means an indication of my enjoyment, so please bear with me on that. And I'm really excited because I read this last week and had to wait to record on it. Or not last week, week before. I read it right after the last recording on Saturday. And I'm excited because now I finally get to read again, even though I won't get recordings done for that until the week after. So this section starts off from Pride's POV. I don't know if we have been in Pride's POV before. I think we have. I'm trying to remember, but it is a fascinating place to be. He really has feelings about Lindon, and it is simultaneously hilarious and frustrating. One thing that I will say about this author, which I have really enjoyed, is a lot of the time when there are people who don't like characters that we've grown close to, I can understand their feelings on that. You know, I've been re-listening with Owen to the earlier books, and Naru Gui's hatred of Ethan is so understandable. Like, it really, I don't even get mad at him about it, because Ethan is insufferable in regard to him. So, like, when I'm in Naru Gui's head and he's super suspicious and angry, as much as I'm like, oh, dude, a big part of me is like, no, I get it. But with Pride, when I am reading his perspective on Lindon, it's just so, he has such a bad, he is not perceptive. You know, he sees what he thinks is there. And there are people like that. Whatever they're looking at, they have a predetermined idea of what they're going to see, and they shape their impression of whatever they actually see to match the expectation they already had. It's a very dangerous place to be. It's sometimes harmless if it's somebody that, you know, doesn't really have a huge effect on your life. Like, I call that the bitch eating crackers thing. I think people have heard of this probably, where it's like somebody isn't necessarily doing anything wrong, but you hate them so much that they could just be eating crackers, and you look at them and you're like, look at that bitch eating crackers over there. Ugh, I hate her, just eating those crackers like a fucking bitch, like she is. And that is sort of Pride's attitude with Lindon in this, is everything that Lindon does, he's just like, the fucking crackers. I can't get over this fucking guy with the crackers. And it's not until eventually he gives Lindon the diamond veins and Lindon bows to him that he's finally like, oh, well, maybe he's not so bad. And I was just like, dude, you are really easy. He just needs flattery. And he's actively going like, why is he so disrespectful towards me all the time? Maybe because you have been antagonistic from the instant he set foot on your family's property, and you have never, ever acted like you guys are on the same side, but like one other time. Everything he has done, you had a problem with, and made it really obvious you had a problem with it. You have been a dick. So perhaps that's why. Come on, Pride. But he doesn't see it. So when we start off this section, Pride is battered. And as it turns out, so is the rest of the team. They have been cornered by a bunch of dragons and some of the Dread God cults. And they are not willing to kill the team because they don't want to have those kinds of casualties. A couple people have died, but not people from this team specifically, I don't think. But they're basically toying with everyone. And they're forcing them to compete in these like contests as games. They're pretending that it's all in good fun, but they're never willing to like let the other team win. One of the dragons or, you know, one of the priests or whatever will suddenly, if it looks like their side is going to lose, they'll like shoot a striker technique and be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I thought there was a fly. I was just trying to get rid of it. My bad. And they've been doing this for days, and, you know, we've got people now who are injured enough that even with like bodies that can heal pretty well and the elixirs that they would be carrying, they've gotten to a point now that they aren't healing up after their fights. And it's getting bad. And he knows that they're going to be released after this. But in the meantime, they're going to be like tormented and humiliated for fun. And part of Pride is just like, I wish they would just kill us. Like, at least I wouldn't feel so, you know? And I kind of understand that. He's got a similar attitude as Yerin has, you know? Like, I think about Yerin and her response to Mercy being seemingly exiled from the family. And how she was like, that's a cruel thing to do. Just kill her if you're going to do that. Like, that's nicer. And that's sort of where Pride's coming from. But Pride is like, you know, he is still doing his best. He managed to rip the tail off the dragon that he was just fighting and feels pretty good about that. And at this point, Narusea is fighting. And she, as he puts it, is basically fueled by pure rage right now. Like, she's not even doing techniques. She's just so fucking angry that she's just screaming and like bashing this guy. And he is starting to sort of fall under the strain. So it's sort of a matter of time before somebody likely will step in and fuck her up. And at this point, he hears her like suddenly stop yelling very abruptly. And he thinks that she got. And instead, when he looks up, she says, sure took their time. And he sees the gold cloud ship headed in their direction. And I thought he would be excited, but instead he is angry because they should have turned and run away. And I love this. Eventually, when they all land, he says to Mercy, you should have brought reinforcements. And she's like, I did. Because to his eyes, there's just 3 people here, and what good is this? But he doesn't appreciate how much they have grown and what they can do. Not really. So all of these, the evil one says unspecified overlord. Yeah, and there's an overlord technique that gets launched at them by somebody from Red Moon Hall. And it doesn't do anything. And it turns out that this cloud ship is resistant to anything up to Sage or Herald. So I really want, like, I don't want to spend time on this right now, but just out of curiosity, if any of you know why Will White chose the names he did for each level, I would be curious, because it's interesting how it goes. Like, there's materials at first with wood and copper and jade and gold. And then we transform into Underlord, Overlord, and then Herald. which is a completely separate thing for me from like monarch. I don't know enough about the origin of that word, but I'm just curious if there's a, you know, something established that he's using as a template for this. So basically they drop off the cloud ship in a ball of Madra that Lindon is using to protect them. Pride immediately when he sees this. He's such a fucking dick. He's basically watching them jump off. And he's like, this is such a stupid thing to do. The only one that might make it is Ethan. And otherwise they're all going to die. And I'm like, Pride, do you really think they would jump over the side if they weren't prepared to land safely? Like, what do you think is going on here? He has this like understanding of what's happening that's seen through this prism of his own. This is a very human thing, I guess, but he has his own battle, clearly, with pride and ego, and he puts that on other people. And that's not what's happening. And dude, if you could just stop completely underestimating everybody that is on your side, maybe you would feel a little bit better about the situation. I'm just saying, it's so frustrating to like, the whole thing. Eventually they land, and the blue sphere, he notes, is deeper blue than the Madra that Pride has seen before. And it carries an impression like it will scrub everything clean. And while the ball of light surrounded him, his eyes turned solid oceanic blue as though they were made from sapphires. So that's pretty fun. Lindon's got, I wouldn't say, if it's not really a gold sign. I mean, it kind of is. They kind of go back and forth on calling it that. But it's kind of neat that it changes depending on what core he's contacted with. And I think that I wasn't demonstrating excitement over his like bonding with Little Blue in the last section because I didn't fully understand what that was going to mean for him. But now I'm realizing that basically it looks like his Madra's going to just heal his channels because of Blue's bond with him, the way that she had been able to heal him when she touched him previous. So all he has to do is like switch cores and his Madra channels will be healed up from using Black Flame, if I'm not mistaken, which is pretty fucking huge, actually. You know, like he previously had to carry her with him and pop her out and get a heal if he didn't want to like overdo it and really permanently hurt himself. And if she wasn't nearby or if it wasn't safe to pull her out, that wasn't an option. And I'm wondering if that's something that can be extended to other people, because she has gone and helped cleanse other people as well. Will his Madra be able to do that for others, or is it just something that works on him? And if they're bonded, will her power still work on other people, or is that just, I would assume it would. But yeah, this is a very fascinating turn, and I really like too that Pride mentions how Lindon's like vibe when he had Black Flame was always very domineering and aggressive, and when he was using his like pure Madra, it never felt like that, and now it does. And again, I really have to wonder, is it domineering and aggressive, or is that you feeling that way, sir? I don't know how much to believe you. I'm assuming that it is, because later we see Daji almost shit his pants, and that deeply satisfying, honestly. Even more than seeing him get gripped up and his like techniques fail. Watching him be genuinely scared of Lindon in a way that he hadn't been was probably the best I could have asked for, and I loved it, and I just chef's kiss. So they all land, and Pride is like looking at him expecting to see like wounds. Nothing. There are people like trying to hit them with all these techniques as they're landing, and they're able to like either block some of them with the pure Madra or like deal with them as they come through the bubble. It doesn't do anything. And Mercy simply seemed to be enjoying the ride down. So at this point, Lindon's like, hey, what's up? It looks like we're doing some fighting. Awesome. Can I fight too? Was that cool? And the dragons are like, all right, yeah, let's do this. And he asks what the prizes are. And it eventually suggests, how about the winner gets to keep whatever the loser has on their person when they enter the ring? And the Red Moon Hall lady is like, oh, that's awesome. Yeah, okay. And Lindon keeps his void key on him, which, reminder, that is a precious object. Like, it's hugely valuable. I believe back in Ghostwater when he found it, I think that Orthos told him all of the Aurelius's wealth wouldn't be able to purchase one. That kind of precious. So this is a real fucking swagger right now, keeping that on him and being the one to make the suggestion in the first place. So this woman comes into the ring with him, and her name is Juvari. And this moment, Pride is watching this, and he's like, ugh, what an idiot. I can't believe he kept his void key on him. What is he even doing? This was idiotic at best and naive at worst. While it would be gratifying to see Lindon lose after that arrogant entrance, Pride still held on to some hope that his confidence was justified. As nice as it would be to see Lindon's opinion of himself taken down a notch or two, Pride wanted the enemy to lose. Oh, how generous of you. Pride, you're such a good guy for not being like, I want my own side to lose because I hate this dude so much. Oh my God, you're such a child. Stop it. Get over yourself. So, Lindon goes into this fight, and this woman is a dream artist. And reminder, that shit doesn't work on Lindon because of Dross. So she starts this shit. And at first Pride gets like suckered a bit and is like, oh shit. And starts like looking at this vision that she's presenting. And he finally comes out of the daze that she sort of sent him in, and he realizes Lindon's got her by the throat already. It's like immediate. It happens so fast that he doesn't register it yet. And he's draining her. And Pride is watching this woman's like being be sucked into him. And then not only is like a bunch of Madra, like dream Madra, pulled in, he expects Lindon to vent it. And instead, the dream Madra goes up to the base of his skull where Dross is. And it's just one of those moments of just seeing somebody do a thing that practically nobody does. It's like, we know that Northstrider can do this sort of thing, but it's not common. And it's sort of monstrous in a way. He's leaving people as like these shells that need all of this expensive sort of magical surgery to recover from it. And it's truly frightening. It's genuinely like, this has shaken up Lindon's whole vibe in a way that I don't think I anticipated what it would do for his reputation, for him to like leave behind piles of husks of people who are still technically alive. He hasn't killed them, which fits in with like the rules, but he is powering himself up every time and is so like, it's so brutal, it's just, so he does this, he drops her. And then he says, gratitude, who's next? Pride's opinion of Lindon went up a level. I love it. I love it so much. So finally, of course, everybody's like, oh, well, we're not playing anymore now. And you ruined the game and you suck. I hate you. And then they start to try and like, send techniques at them again. Meanwhile, Pride goes over to Lindon and is like, hey, look. Just take the fucking diamond veins, man. And Lindon's like, what? Are you serious? And Pride says, is there anyone else on our team who can put them to better use? And Lindon is so genuinely grateful and like deeply sincere, bowing to him, that it really makes Pride feel a lot better. So Lindon says it's going to take 3 days to process these veins. Then I'm going hunting. And eventually they get everybody up onto the cloud ship to make their escape. And it's like, you know, it takes a lot of protection because they're sort of vulnerable on their way onto the ship. Once they're on there, they're good. But it's getting on there with all these people who are injured that's really a trick. And then there's this last moment where Lindon is staring out the hatch at everybody. Pride's watching him and is just like, I wonder what he's thinking about. And an overlord shoots an arrow at him. And this arrow is a deadly attack from an overlord. Lindon catches the shit out of midair. It does not even injure him. It shoves him back 5 feet, but it doesn't injure him. And then he looks at the arrow and is like, nice, and puts it in his void key. Honestly, first of all, Lindon, don't become a hoarder, okay? I know it's tempting. I get it. But just be careful about that, because you're just going to have so much shit in that void key. You just, you know, sell it off, do what you got to do. But I could see him becoming a hoarder very easily. But also the fact that he is at a level where he can catch an overlord strike like that out of midair as an underlord still is truly something. Next level. So then we go to Yerin, and she has all of these gifts that she has been sent because of, you know, getting to the next stage in the tournament. So there's a bunch of things. I'm trying to find like the best way to, I guess I'm just going to have to go one by one, but I'm going to try and do it quickly. So the first thing that she opens is a dream tablet, but it's like more. And the Winter Sage says it's a sword codex, and like starts practically drooling and wants to borrow it and the whole thing. It's really funny. I really enjoy how much the Winter Sage wears her heart on her sleeve for the contrast of everybody else, who really tries to remain so stoic, but also it's embarrassing a little bit. And then let's see, what's the next thing? A decorated box from the Aurelius family, and this turns out to be a dream tablet containing a soul fire control art. And Min Shui is sort of like, whatever. But Charity is like, okay, look, it's not like extremely expensive or anything, but they put a lot of like thought into this. They did some research on what's to your advantage, and they really selected this carefully for you. And I think that deserves some, you know, credit. Which I really like that sort of thing. I know recently, you know, it was just Christmas, and it can be really interesting to get gifts from people in your life, because you start to realize sometimes that like people don't know you that well, really. Like they'll get you stuff that you're like, why did you think I would like this? And then there are people who will get you something that's fairly small and yet so dead on, and you're just like, yes, thank you, you know. And that's the vibe I get here. So then there's this like weird sort of, what's the word I want? It's like a box. I keep thinking of it as like a steampunk sort of box, because it says a mechanical box of brass and steel that hissed and vented Madra essence every few seconds as pistons worked in and out. So all I could think, you know, is something out of like Sucker Punch or something like this. And she opens it, and there's like this construct inside. It looked like an ever-shifting and folding network of purple, pink, and violet light. And Yerin's looking at the sages like, what is this? And they're going, oh my God, take it, absorb it, quick. Oh my God, it's going to disappear. And finally she like and cycles it up to her head, and she immediately feels this like precision sort of clarity and focus. And both the sages are like, oh my God, they could have written something on the card to let us know what it was. Jesus, that was about to just disappear on us and go completely to waste. Because Charity says, like, this is the exact kind of gift that we were hoping to get. That's the shit that we're here for. So then the next thing they get is from the dragons. And what they send is called a Madra engine. And it turns out it's made from the remnants of human children, which they did on purpose to be assholes. And it's the kind of thing that they can claim it's really valuable. I mean, our candidate, who is at the top, uses one. It's been extremely advantageous to her. I don't understand what you're so upset about. We were very generous. And yet, we all know, you know. And I love Yerin is so disgusted by this. And she's just like, what the fuck? How are they allowed to do this? But Charity's like, look, I'm going to be honest. We weren't super nice with what we sent to them either. And I'm fine with that. So we'll just take this for the team. It's fine. Because as it turns out, this thing eats into your life force in a way that will kill her really quickly if she were to try and put it to use. What she gets later from the Nine Cloud Kingdom, Nine Cloud Court, right, is this piece of fruit that makes it so she can use the Madra engine after all. And so it winds up working out. But at first it just looks like it's something that she's never going to be able to actually absorb. So what we find out later, too, that Charity sent to Sephara, she made a gold steel life-sized statue of the sister that Lindon killed. And honestly, that is really brazen. I'm surprised that she was that overt. But you know what? I'm here for it. 100%. So... Oh yeah, so she gets the fruit. I think I talked about that already. And then the Nine Cloud, like, soul, after giving her her present, also tells her that she's going to be facing Yan Shomei, is going to be the next opponent. And Yerin's, like, relieved because she's worried about going up against Sephara, but also she's kind of like, I just want to get it over with. Oh my God, can I just fight her already? Which I definitely understand, but she needs some time. She really does. Like, it's clear she's trying to level up fast, and Charity keeps on sort of emphasizing to her how dangerous it's going to be for her to level up to Overlord with this, like, short time span. Ideally, she would have at least a year, and even that would really be too, like, short a time. Most people would suggest a decade for her to stabilize, and they're trying to push it here. And, you know, they're warning her, we may get you to the point where you can, like, win the tournament and you aren't going to be able to advance beyond where we get you. And we don't want that. So we're trying to avoid it with these gifts and making use of this time. But it's a danger, and you need to be aware of that. But she eats the fruit, a heart piercer fruit. This is the last elixir for life or blood essence you will ever need. With just this fruit, you would have the lifespan of an archlord as an underlord, or you could run the Madra engine with no harm to yourself. And she eats it and is like, I can feel this is really powerful, but it's going to take weeks for this to actually cycle in and be absorbed by my body. And they're in the midst of talking about the time issue when the last gift that is sitting here right now, she gets the very last gift a little later, but the last gift that she already has in her possession starts to, like, blink and flash. And it's from Northstrider, and she had kind of like been ignoring it because it looked really boring, which is not surprising because he doesn't care about aesthetic at all. He's literally wearing 2 different shoes. Reminder, guys, I find that so fucking hilarious. I keep picturing him as like a much more serious, but similarly like disheveled the dude from Big Lebowski. Of just like, he's so not conscious of like what he looks like and the impression that he's giving, and it could not really care less about that. So he is, it's a key, to open a separated space, basically another like little pocket world. And when they open it, he tells them, this shit is going to allow 3 to 5 people in for 1 day, and you'll be ejected from it. In that time, 36 days will pass inside. And I was sort of hopeful, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think based on the way he talks about it, it ejects them after 1 day and then will disappear. Is that correct? So they will get 1 batch of 36 days. They won't get to spend every day in there and get 36 days per day of their training with her. How long is it between now and the next competition, the next match? Because I kind of thought at first that, if it was 2 weeks, they were going to get, 14 times 36 days. And then I realized, oh no, it's just the one-time use, which, don't get me wrong, it's still like hugely helpful, but I had an even bigger, badder idea of what it was. And then once I had to readjust my expectation, I was a little bit like, oh, well, no, that still helps, but it's not quite as good as I thought. I thought they were getting the equivalent of like a year almost. And no, they're just getting a little bit over a month. But nevertheless, it's a massively like impressive gift that the Winter Sage is just like, I really bet he was planning on using this himself. This is like, the fact that he just gave this to you is huge. And it's just, Charity, I'm concerned you don't appreciate how rare this opportunity is. We must be fully prepared before we enter, which means we need the last prize. So this is where fucking the Sage of Red Faith shows up. This dude. So, guys, I don't know how many of y'all have watched the animated Lord of the Rings with like the rotoscoping. I watched it for the first time a couple of weeks ago with Owen because he had really wanted to get stoned and watch it. And by stoned, I just mean take a bunch of CBD because we just don't have access to weed here. It's very frustrating. So we took a bunch of CBD and we put it on. And the fucking way that Gandalf is drawn, he does these really like bonkers hand movements that are like a cross between sort of Jack Sparrow and like a kid's magician. Real, like just super dramatic and almost comical. But he's taking himself really seriously. And that's what I picture for the Sage of Red Faith, is that he's like so sincere about it, but like absurd. And just, he gets in her face with his finger a couple of times, like pointing dramatically to the point where she eventually just like smacks the finger out of her face. Like, get away from me. And I honestly felt that in my soul. I don't know if any of y'all have had this, but especially as a woman working in the food industry, when you work in kitchens, people can be like really aggressive, and a lot of the time chefs don't take women in kitchens seriously, specifically. And I have had a couple of chefs get up in my space in this sort of way. And I did have to physically shove somebody away from me. And it didn't happen again. Once I like established that boundary and was like, oh, that is not what we're doing. he didn't do it again. But it was definitely a moment of like, oh, you think that's how this is going to be? And he doesn't seem like bothered by it when she smacks his hand away, but it's like, it's the fact that he's not bothered by it is part of what's so annoying. Like, it just rolls right off him. He doesn't care that he's being offensive or presumptuous. He is so laser focused on the message he's trying to deliver here that doesn't matter to him. So basically he's delivering this in person because he's still trying to convince her that she needs to join up with him, ideally. At the very least, continue to cultivate her blood shadow. And he has this cylinder, and in the center floats a drop of blood that gushes so much blood aura that it fills the building and outweighs the power of the Winter Sage's spirit. And he tells her it's a heart's gem, the ultimate source of blood aura. As Heaven's torch is the pinnacle of fire aura, and Titan's bone is of earth, this is the greatest natural treasure of its type in the world. Furthermore, it is condensed from the blood of the Red Moon Herald, who was once my own blood shadow. Now, I don't know if we knew about this before. I think Evil One might have spoiled me a little bit about this. Did we know that his blood shadow had run off on its own before this? Because I don't think that he has talked about it until now, but I could be wrong and I missed it. I just want to caution y'all on stuff like that. Just be careful because, like, there are going to be things that I may not have reached it yet. And even if I am about to find out about it shortly, just be careful. So this, he is so mad because he had gotten it up to this level that he was thinking then he could absorb it and become a monarch really easily. And it basically did its own thing. Okay, everybody's saying it was mentioned before. Okay, cool. And it has surpassed I don't know if I want to say surpassed, because he is a sage, but it's advanced enough that he can't use it the way that he had intended to. And he tells her that you have to cultivate the shadow, but you can't trust it. And I think this is a really interesting bit that I suspect we are going to find out is inaccurate. He is telling her essentially that his shadow left out of its own treachery and selfishness. And that in some ways it's he blames himself for giving it the leeway that it got. And this is why he's telling her not to trust it. But I have a suspicion trusting it and being a partner with it is going to be actually the key for her versus trying to dominate it, which is what he isn't he keeps on telling her. No one else other than myself has reached your stage. They were devoured by their shadows because their wills were weak, or they lacked the insight to become a sage, or they fell in battle, or they succumbed to their own lack of discipline or talent. And use this aura for nourishment, that it may become a potent weapon, but your will must remain dominant and do not fuse with it until you become a sage. I feel like I think that maybe his shadow ran away from him because he was an asshole and was trying too hard to dominate it, perhaps. And it feels like the more we get to know her blood shadow, the more it's craving personhood or respect or something. It feels like it wants love in a way that Yerin wants love. Like, it's a reflection of this longing she has as well as a physical reflection of her. And I kind of feel like that might be the thing, you know, that she's treated it as a parasite and as this thing to be hated and feared because of what it did to her family. Completely understandable, by the way. I mean, yeah. But we're finding out that the way that we've been viewing a lot of these, like the blood cults, isn't necessarily like accurate to all of, there's been a lot of propaganda and a lot of like assumption, and it might not be as straightforward as it has looked. And maybe that's true of the Blood Shadow as well. Maybe there is something to this that she doesn't know or understand. I don't know. I'm curious. But she basically tells him to go fuck himself, and then starts mocking how like creepy he looks and that he probably scares children. And he leaves, and Charity's like, wow, you probably shouldn't have done that, but we're going to talk and I'll get you some better comebacks so that we can do this better next time, which I found very funny. So then we go to Safara's POV, and she's looking at the presents that she got. So there's a bunch of stuff that's like, you know, helpful for battle, but Reagan Shen is aware that she's got pretty much as she can handle, that she's fragile now because she advanced too quick, really. So what he gave her is this like little sort of doll that helps her shift forms more easily. And it's her favorite present because she's very preoccupied, I might even use that word, with how she looks and how her advancement affects her appearance. I continue to find it really fascinating that the dragons want so much to look like human beings. It's like a really, you know, it's just such an interesting thing to throw in there that doesn't really necessarily have anything to do with the plot, but feels like a true potential side effect. I don't know, you know, colonialism, who knows? It's like a weird sort of mesh with that in its way. So she's also thinking like about how the Aurelius family, despite the fact that they like are poor and hate her, they gave her this pocket world, the Dawn Sky Palace, that has just this gorgeous house in it. She lounged in it now, and they had even redecorated for her, lining all the furniture in gold and planting trees that shone with a golden light. And this is so cool. I just like can't imagine. We still haven't seen the fortresses that they ordered, but getting a fucking house as a gift, you know, a secret pocket house that you can like carry with you. Are you kidding me? Oh my God. It's like having a camper, but on steroids, where you could just go anywhere and you just be at home wherever you go. That sounds amazing to me. You wouldn't have to pack. You just leave all your stuff in your house. Just bring the house with you. Who cares? It's fine. And then there's Northstrider, who gives her. So let's see. The 8-Man Empire gave her a Tear of the Deep, the highest grade natural treasure that produced water aura, though it would be useless to her without the fire equivalent. Her monarch should be able to track down a heaven's torch, so that was useful enough. So I thought that was interesting, that there's more than one of each of these natural treasures, which makes sense that there's not just one in the world, but, you know, I think that's interesting. And Northstrider gave her more ghost water. It is the prize your sister failed to win. And she apparently has ghost water. We knew that. But evidently she didn't know that's where it was from. I don't know how they got a hold of it, like, and gave it to her in the first place, but evidently she wasn't aware Northstrider had created it. So the fact that one of her secret weapons that she's been relying on was created by her enemy really humiliates her. Like, she knows that her king would be like, well, you're using their own weapon against, but she doesn't feel that way about it. And I wouldn't either. I gotta be honest. I side with her on that one. And then, of course, she talks about the statue of her sister that she tore apart with her bare hands, which, yeah. I mean, it's made out of gold steel. I guess you could sell chunks of gold steel. So let's go to Station Daji, because he's so, oh my God. I love this scene because of the interaction that he has a little bit later. So he's, out here doing the same contest that Lindon's team has been doing, and they haven't been losing too many lives, but they have gotten sort of cornered in this fortress. And the fact that they can't leave and go engage in battle the way that they were because so many more have arrived is bothering him a lot. And he says something about how he hated how often what was wise and what was cowardly looked like the same thing, which I really enjoy, that he even can make that distinction. And he still succumbs to his ego and doing the stupid thing sometimes because he doesn't want to look like a coward. But the fact that he's aware that those two things can look the same at least shows that there's potential for growth in him. It's just, the first step is realizing you have a problem. And he does. He has rage issues and doesn't know how to control himself and make level-headed decisions when he's overcome with emotion. He's just too emotional. You got to calm down, buddy. Do some meditation or something. And he's thinking about how Meira is sort of she has apparently seemed to have given up on life after Kiro's death, and that his dad had been going to execute her, and she did absolutely nothing to defend herself, and he just felt so sorry because he could see how devastated she was that he couldn't do it, so he left her alive. And Daji basically avoids her because the fact that she's sort of detached in this weird way is so different from the way he's grieving that it bothers him a lot, and he just doesn't want to be around somebody who doesn't seem fired up for revenge the way that he does. So they find out eventually that there's this tower that's close enough by that they could actually go and attack it. And it's been a while since they've gotten some points with this whole game that's been going on. So he's like, you know what, let's fucking do this. And they head out, and he starts to notice that there aren't people outside of the tower like there should be. And it's just where is everybody? And as they get closer, this flock of dragons unveils themselves and comes at them, a bunch of underlords. And Meira yells retreat. But Daji says not yet. And he's really the one that's in charge apparently, so they have to listen to him, and they go inside. And he comes up up against Lindon. And fucking Daji here is it says, Daji remembered the ease with which Lindon had dispatched him before, and glee rose up as he realized this time he had the advantage, and he had 5 allies backing him up while Lindon was alone. Yeah, maybe the ease with which Lindon dispatched you should make you pause, sir, instead of champing at the bit like this. He doesn't get it. So he's attacking, and he gets hit in the back. And at first he thinks Lindon somehow managed to do that. And then he looks up and realizes that it's Meira, who apologizes on his behalf and asks Lindon to please let him go. Lindon is very surprised because he had thought Meira would be the one that would try and come at him. And she says, we are not all idiots blinded by revenge. And Daji bristled at that, but then Lindon stepped through from the doorway. Black flame raged through him, and the spiritual pressure stopped Daji in his tracks. When he'd tried to ambush Lindon before, he had sensed only his pure Madra. His black dragon Madra was far, far more frightening. Daji's fear was like a bucket of cold water over his anger, and Lindon wasn't even looking at him. And basically, Meira promises that she'll keep control of Daji, and if you'll just let us deal with the people who are coming after us, we'll leave you alone. And Lindon's like, oh, you don't have to worry about them anymore. They were in the contest. They were in the tournament. They're gone. They know me. They're not trying to fuck with this. And honestly, if that isn't... It's just the hottest thing. It really is. My God. Get it, Yerin. Shit. Just being like, oh no, they know me. They're not. Don't worry about it. Fuck. And he just like walks away, and Daji looks in and sees all of these bodies piled up and realizes they're not dead, even though they look like they're dead. They feel like husks. And he's still trying to pursue Lindon. He took our points and he made some deal with the dragon so they wouldn't attack him. And here comes the thing that I love so much. Meira pulled off her helmet specifically so she could glare at him with withering fury. How did you survive, True Underlord? How did you survive getting out of bed every morning? If you were the smallest fraction of the man your brother was, your father wouldn't have to cry himself to sleep every night. Oh! I have said this exact sort of thing. How are you alive? There are people that I have met or seen on like TV that are so incredibly stupid, there's just no other word for it, that I genuinely don't know how they've managed to survive and be successful adults who have lives and homes. I just don't know how they're doing it when such basic shit seems to escape them. I just really felt this when she was saying it to him. And I honestly, there were in some ways, my ex-husband, I felt this way about. He was such a good person, but he was also so dense about things that I was like, and he got remarried really quickly. And part of me was like, well, he needed to, because I don't know how he would be if he didn't have somebody like kind of holding his hand, because he just was clueless sometimes, which is part of why things didn't wind up working out with us. Because initially I saw that as sort of like, oh, okay, well then I can be like the person who's sort of like running things in the relationship, and I like sort of liked that because I can be a control freak. And then I gradually began to realize like, oh, there's a difference between being somebody who sort of manages stuff and being the only person who knows how to do anything. And I don't like that. I don't want to be a parent. There was, if you guys have ever watched Nailed It on Netflix, which is a pretty funny baking show. The whole thing is that they bring people in who don't know how to bake and have them try and do these elaborate things, and they just are terrible, and it's really embarrassing sometimes what they manage to come up with. But there was a girl recently who they were saying like in the directions, a 1/4 cup of melted butter. And she had been really stupid all episode, but at this point she pulls a stick of butter out of the fridge in its wrapper and stands there and literally says, "Is this butter melted? I think this butter's already melted." How? It was in the fridge. It's in a wrapper. What are you talking about? And it was just like a moment of me just staring at the screen, and I had to pause it. Because I couldn't handle, and Owen had been on his phone, so he missed it. And I rewound it. I was like, just watch this. And when we got to that part, he was like, what? I don't know how to cook, and at least I know that. And I was like, I genuinely, like, how does she not? There are so many things in life that you make a small mistake and you will die. If you can't tell if butter's melted, how are you doing anything else and not killing yourself? So, anyway, they get in a fight. And he's really in the midst of being like, oh, I have this. She's weak. I'm right. And she knocks his ass out and, like, beats the hell out of him. Oh, I really want him to, like, grow up. And I just don't think that's going to happen, man. So then we go to Yerin. And this is the last section. She is in the pocket world. And she's trying to reach that next stage of insight about who she is in order to level up, basically. And it turns out the pocket world looks a lot like Ghost Water, but instead of having the, like, dark water teeming with sacred beasts that are super scary, it's clear blue water and looks lovely. And she is trying to, like, meditate on who she is, and she's not getting anywhere and is just super frustrated. And there's a couple of wells here. And let's see, a cave containing 2 wells of glowing water and a fenced off living area. So one of them is the purplish water that Dross soaked in. And so that's interesting that, like, that water still exists. Like, I kind of had thought that was the one source, was that well in Ghost Water that is now destroyed. But evidently, like, they figured out how to make it, and he can just still make this water. So, and then the other one, I'm trying to remember what the other one is, because that's the one that, like, gives you almost like a night's sleep in a bottle. And let's see. Oh, right, here it is. She dipped into the blue well. And the blue well is the one that helps advance, strictly, right? The only well that's missing is the lifeline well, if I'm not mistaken, which was, I think, green. So she is drinking this and then comes up with a little snack and sits down to watch the Winter Sage and the Blood Shadow, who are fighting against one another. And the Sage is, like, just mocking the Blood Shadow. You have no grace, no thought, mindless beast, clumsy ape. Charity was making notes nearby, and after a moment she folded them up to join Yerin. So this is when the Winter Sage says that she will never touch the sword icon if she has this Blood Shadow in her. And Yerin gets genuinely a little bit worried about that, and is like, is that true? And Charity says that seems hasty. And is like, I don't think that is actually even relevant. I think she's a little bit wrapped up in what she thinks you should be. And that's a different thing than what can be. The only thing stopping you now is that your willpower is unfocused, but your will is refined as you advance through the Lord Realm. So I really hope that they figure out, because I think Charity might have some knowledge that she's not sharing, or at least a suspicion similar to mine regarding how Yerin can, like, make this her friend, an ally in a way, that they have not attempted in the past. So this is when they talk about, like, the potential damage that could be done, and how if she wins the tournament, they could undo that damage using the help of monarchs, similar to what's going on with Saphara. And Yerin's thinking about how she's still, even now, worried about Lindon leaving her behind, even though she knows that's not even close to how he would handle things. And she takes in the Madra engine into her core. And it takes, a couple of days for that to sort of get settled. So she has to just sit and cycle, basically, because she's not really allowed to use any Madra for anything in that time. So she sits and cycles. And her Blood Shadow comes over and takes the Codex and starts learning some moves from the Codex. And Yerin's, like, watching her and a bit unnerved at how well the Shadow's executing these movements. And she says, "You seeing if you can beat me to Sage?" The Shadow tore off its blindfold to scowl. And I'm like, interested that it's scowling. It doesn't feel like that's a confirmation that it is trying to beat her. I feel like it wants to be buds. And it's so annoyed that she can't see that. It feels like it's frustration. So she says, heaven's luck to you. Maybe you can go off on your own. Then you can eat all the babies you want. Me, I'm going to win a tournament. And it says, and it doesn't have a scary voice anymore. It sounds like her voice. Well, cheers and celebrations for you. And that is the end of the chapter. And honestly, that was a good moment. Is a good moment. I am in the midst of, or did I finish? I just finished Ghostwater with Owen. And I can't wait to get to the part where the Blood Shadow says woof that one time. Every time it speaks, it's just so creepy. And the woof really got me that first time. So I'm hoping, oh guys, I was so excited too, because I got to listen to the end of Ghostwater where Northstrider lets Harmony die. And Owen like fist pumped and was so, like, I was so glad I got to be there when he listened to that part. Yay. Anyway, so yeah, that was a hell of a spot to end off on. I just want Yerin to like coexist with this thing, man. You can be friends, bond with it the way that like Lindon has bonded with his buds, you know, have it be a thing. I don't know. I'm just saying. All right, I better wrap up. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me in the chat, and thank you very much to Andy for commissioning this episode. I'm sorry that it'll be a whole week before the next one, but also I'm not sorry because I'm super tired. And I hope that you guys all had a great holiday and that you have a great new year. And I'll be seeing you in 2021. Till then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.